Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me? Okay. We're here for with City Council chambers with land use hearings. We got two bills today. And before I go into the bills, I'm going to turn it over to staff person Matt Peters. Matt, you want to do your script?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a brief presentation on some of the controls for Webex for folks who have not joined us for one of these hearings before. So in the center of the screen, at the bottom, you should have the controls we have here, microphone controls. Please mute yourself whenever you are not speaking to avoid feedback and background noise. Your video control right next to that. When you are speaking, please turn your video on. We have the participants view. This will allow you to see those who are participating in the hearing. The chat function if you need to send a message in writing. More options we'll go into in a second, and then leave the meeting when it is concluded. If you click on the more options button, you should have the option to raise your hand. That can be used to let the committee know that you have something you'd like to say. And then at the top right-hand corner, we have different options for the view. So you can see the presenter screen with participants on or off, and the grid view to see everybody at once. And some quick best practices for WebEx hearings. Try to find a quiet space with good light and a strong internet connection so you can be seen and heard. Turn on video when you are speaking. Identify yourself before you speak. Mute yourself when you are not speaking. Speak slowly and clearly. Be present and don't multitask. Be patient with yourself and others. And wear headphones with a microphone to cut down on background noise if possible. For public testimony for computer users, the committee staff will coordinate testimony and use the raise hand function to indicate that you wish to testify. And you can raise your hand at any time, but you won't be recognized until we get to the public testimony portion of the hearing. Each speaker must state their name prior to testifying. For those joining by phone, we don't know your name from the number that WebEx gives us, and so we'll just go through and unmute callers one by one. When you're unmuted, you'll hear 2 beeps to let you know, and if you do not wish to testify when you hear those 2 beeps, please just say you have no comments, and if you do wish to testify, please state your name and then proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We will now begin. We're ready to hear City Council Bill 20-0512, the rezoning of 1301 East Fort Avenue. Purpose of changing the zoning for the property known as 3101 East Fort Avenue is block 2034A, lot 001, is outlined in red on the accompanying plat. Rezoning from the I1 zoning district to the R8 zoning district and providing for a special effective date. At this time, let me say that there's all the public notice requirements have been met, and I recognize Councilman Costello, who is the sponsor of the legislation. Councilman Costello, a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. As for my colleagues' favorable consideration, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, thank you. As for my colleagues' favorable consideration on this bill, this is a rezoning to facilitate a development project of about 120 townhomes on the 1300 block of East Ford Avenue at the former PQ Corporation site, directly across the street from the elementary and middle school in the Locust Point community. I do ask that we move forward with the hearing today, but I would ask, Mr. Chair, that we hold off on a vote today. The reason for that is we have had ongoing negotiations between the developer and the community. Those have been very fruitful. I fully expect that we will have full agreement in the next 1 to 2 weeks. The developer, Mark Saperstein, has done a number of projects in the Locust Point community, as you're aware of from your time representing that area in the 10th district. And I have every expectation they will get an agreement. Every single project he has done down there has been successful and has had either unanimous or overwhelming community support. So with that, I would ask that we go through with this hearing and then call a voting session at a later date, hopefully in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Clark?
I just had one question for.
Go ahead. You got the floor.
Councilman Costello, I'm so pleased to hear you call for, a postponement of the vote because negotiations going on with the community about what the design, right? So that's great. Thank you for that. Secondly, this is industrial land, and a couple years ago, well, at least we were all here, I think, we went through a long session with the industrial group about preserving existing industrial space. Can you just comment on this as the person who knows this community and what's going on here?
Yeah, Councilman Costello, it's a good question. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So the development team has reached out to the industrial community to discuss this. This project is in a very unique location in that it backs up to the railroad track. It is bounded on the south side by the railroad track, on the north side by East Ford Avenue, specifically the 1300 block. What makes this site truly unique is that there's an elementary middle school directly across the street. I will point out that the developer has worked very, very closely with Principal Beth Mason from Scott Key Elementary Middle School. And there is support from not only the Locust Point Civic Association, but Principal Beth Mason, as well as, my understanding is correctly, members of the PTO that have been involved. They've been concerned for as long as I've been on the council, and I think former Councilman Bill Cole and prior to that, Councilman Reisinger would attest to the fact that there have always been concerns with having a full-scale chemical plant directly across the street from an elementary middle school. That being said, I would point out that the developer did have several concepts in mind, which included an apartment building, and realized that would be problematic for the industrial community and would be problematic for the school, and that the best and greatest use for this site is for new infill row home development. I hope that adequately answers your question, Councilwoman.
Councilwoman, you good? Councilwoman Clark?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Councilman, for that background. It makes me feel good about it and about waiting until the community has a better about how it. Thank you.
And one last thing.
Go ahead.
I would point out that we're probably 98% of the way toward agreement. So we're really just working out some final crossing the T's and dotting the I's with the MOU. the replacement of a tree and exactly where the new trees can be planted. So we're just about there. Again, I just want to respect the community in this process, but I also want to respect the sense of urgency on behalf of the developer to make sure that we're queued up so that we can move forward as soon as there's agreement here.
Councilman, I just want to add, representing Lucas Point, that association thoroughly vets any development before they sign on. So thank you. Any of my other colleagues have any questions or concerns they want to address to Councilman? No? Okay, so now we will go, thank you. We now go with the Planning Department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Tise for the Department of Planning. Tamara Woods, my colleague, is the one who prepared this for the Planning Commission review in their meeting of May 7th. She couldn't be here with us today, so I'm presenting on her behalf. In the planning staff's review of this property, and thank you to Councilmember Clark for picking up, we are normally the ones that are here in support of retaining industrial use. But in our analysis, we did agree with the lead sponsor that this is a unique property. It is on rail line. However, it is adjacent to a Pebble Park. It is across from the school. And looking at the trends of development in the area for the past 10 years or so, it has been moving away from industrial in this immediate area and more towards mixed use or residential development. And so with that, we recommended approval of this bill.
Any questions for the planning staff? No? Thank you, Eric. We will now go to BMZA.
This is Lee Boonadu for the BMZA. We stand by our report recommending approval of this bill.
Thank you. DOT?
Mr. Chair, Liam Davis with the Department of Transportation. DOT stands by its bill report, which is no objection.
Thank you. Law Department? Sure. Law Department.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. This is Vic Turvola from the City Law Department. The Planning Department review of this does not show that we have a substantial change in the neighborhood or a mistake that allows the rezoning to occur. That's required by state law as well as our own local law. So in order for you to rezone the property, there's going to have to be some facts established at this hearing or at some point before the City Council that establishes that there has been a substantial change in the neighborhood to allow the rezoning or a mistake in the original rezoning. If you have those facts presented and you agree with the facts that are presented, the Law Department will approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Okay, hold on for 1 second. Matt, do we have a written finding of facts on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have the findings of fact from the Planning Department. We also have supplemental findings that have been submitted by representative for the applicant. I believe Caroline Hecker, who represents the applicant, is in the hearing, if you'd like to hear from her.
Yes.
Let me add, there are no facts in the Commission's report that will allow the rezoning to occur. So Ms. Hecker is going to have to establish what those facts might be.
Okay, when we get to her, is that good enough? Is that good for the Law Department?
If Ms. Hecker does that, we're going to be fine with it.
Okay, Caroline, you want to chime in? Are you there?
Sure. I am. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin, Greenberg on behalf of the applicant. We've submitted to Mr. Peters a supplemental set of facts for the committee to consider in its consideration of this rezoning bill. I'd like to thank Councilman Costello for his support and his explanation of what is occurring here. This is the rezoning of a former chemical plant that had industrial zoning, but they closed in January of this year. They've been there since 1929. And at the time Transform Baltimore occurred, there was no thought that they were going to close. They were going to continue indefinitely into the future, but they had a fire earlier this year and they closed. And as a result, the closure of the ongoing business on this property is a substantial change in the neighborhood that was not contemplated at the time of transform. I think if you were looking at this property fresh, if it had no zoning on it at all, there's no chance the city would ever want to put industrial zoning on a property that's adjacent to an elementary school and a park and across the street from a very robust residential community. In addition, since the Transform Baltimore went into effect in 2017, there's been other extensive development in Locust Point that is not of an industrial character. Phases 2 and 3 of the McHenry Row project, which include an apartment building, an office building, and a hotel, have been developed. The property at 1401 Woodall Street is under construction right now as an office building. The Anthem House project, Anthem House 1 and Anthem House 2 have been developed. And the Alta 47 Townhouse project is also come online since the Transform Baltimore rezoning. If you were to look at a map, and unfortunately I'm not there in person to show you a map of the area, but you would see that Locust Point is surrounded in large part by a rail line, and everything that's inside the rail line by and large is residential. This property is inside the rail line, and the properties that are outside the rail line are more industrial in nature. And as I said, I think if we were looking at this property fresh, we would never think to put industrial zoning on it. But since there was this industrial use there, that's why it had the industrial zoning. But now that the industrial user has left, there really is no need to continue the residential zoning there, and that certainly demonstrates a substantial change in the neighborhood that would justify the rezoning.
So, Victor, are you good? I mean, I could say, I know the councilman Costello could say, but correct. McHenry Row used to be Chesapeake. Before that was industrial, and the Anthem House used to be the old General Electric lot, which is turned residential. So, go ahead.
If the committee accepts the statements by Ms. Hecker as facts, we're certainly going to approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Caroline.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Just a question.
Councilwoman Middleton.
Just a question to refresh my memory. Didn't one time the land use committee we did like a bus tour or something around this whole area when they were, because of the development or along the tracks? Wasn't Locust Point was part of that tour that we did? We did an extensive tour of that whole section of Locust Point, and even further into some of the council area of the first district. Am I correct with that?
Councilman Costello, you remember that?
I don't remember that tour.
Okay.
What I will tell you though is that what Caroline said with respect to where the specific property is located inside the ring of the railroad track, there really isn't any use with the exception of, I believe, Peppercorn Coffee, which is across the street on the 1300 block of East Court Avenue. All of that industrial property is accessible through the Key Highway East extension on the north side of the peninsula, and then on the southern side of the peninsula, Macomb Street with the connection to Interstate 95, both north and southbound. So Ford Avenue traditionally isn't really used as a truck route, even though technically it's a state route, a snow emergency route, and is a designated truck route. That is the preferred route for truck drivers of industrial uses on that place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions?
I have a question. This is Councilwoman Shannon Sneak. Can we just make sure that everyone is muted when they're not speaking, because it's a distraction?
Okay, good point. So to the committee members and all participants is to mute themselves while someone's talking until they're called on. Thank you, Councilwoman Sneak. You're going to do it? Okay. Do I have someone from housing?
Yes, good afternoon, councilmen and members. Stephanie Murdoch, Legislative Liaison for the Department of Housing and Community Development. We stand by our report in support of the bill.
Okay, thank you. BDC? BDC? The one from BDC, it's favorable. Report from the Baltimore Development Corporation that deals with the agency reports. Now we will go to public testimony. Matt, we have any public testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder to everyone joining us by computer, please use the raise hand function to let us know if you have anything to say. Caroline Hecker, if you have anything else you'd like to add, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. I didn't realize I hadn't unraised my hand, but we're happy to answer any questions. I think a representative of the developer is on the phone as well, or online. We are, as Councilman Costello indicated, we are working very closely with the Locust Point Civic League, and we are expecting to finalize an MOU with them next week. So we're happy to move forward at that time.
Any of my committee members have a question or a comment to either Caroline or the developer? No? Okay, thank you. Any other?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two callers who joined us. I'm going to unmute them now to see if they have any testimony. First caller, you should have heard two beeps.
No testimony.
Thank you. And second caller. No response. Mr. Chair, that looks like all of the public testimony.
Thank you, Matt. At the request of the councilman, we will not be taking a vote on this bill because of negotiations between the developer and the community. So we will go on recess to further notice on City Council Bill 20-0512. And now we are ready to hear, where's the, now we're ready to hear City Council Bill 19-475. This is a zoning conditional use conversion of a single family dwelling unit to two dwelling units in the R8 zoning district located at 806 Reservoir Street. For the purpose of permitting subject to certain conditions to conversion of a single family dwelling unit in the R8 zoning district, the property known as 806 Reservoir Street, which is block 3445, lot 049, is outlined in red on the accompanying plat. All the public notice requirements have been met. And at this time, I recognize Councilman Pinkett, the sponsor of the bill. Councilman Pinkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I solicit the support of my colleagues on this conversion of a single family dwelling to two dwelling units in the R8 zoning district in Reservoir Hill. The owner of this 3-story, 3,300 square foot property came before the community last year, specifically the Reservoir Hill Improvement Council and a joint committee of housing development that is made up of a variety of organizations within the Reservoir Hill community. Initially, they came to the community with a plan for 4 units, 4 rental units after, I guess, conversations, discussions with the community. The new plan, which is before us today, calls for the creation of 2 units. From the opinion of the Joint Committee, as well as Reservoir Hill Improvement Council, this plan that's most recently being offered by the owner is less dense, has adequate parking, and from their opinion preserves a unique existing staircase while maximizing the historic character of the structure. In the opinion of RHIC and the Joint Committee, they feel that this plan by the owner is consistent with their objectives of creating a neighborhood that's diverse, a variety of diverse income levels, and also is inclusive. And so I'm asked for your support on the conversion of this single family unit to 2 dwelling units. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Does any of my colleagues have a question or comment to the councilman? No? Okay, so we're going to go into agency reports. We'll start off with the planning staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Martin French for the Planning Department and Planning Commission. The Planning Commission met on January 16th of this year to consider this bill. They recommended approval following a public hearing and made the findings specifically that the proposed use would not be detrimental to or endanger public health, safety, or welfare, would not be precluded by any other law, would not be contrary to the public interest, and would be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning code, and meets all criteria for approval specified in subsection 5-406B of the zoning code. The report also includes findings made by the Planning Commission, specifically that the nature of the proposed site, including its size and shape, is adequate for the proposed use. There will be no negative impact on traffic patterns. The proposed use would not impair the present or future development of this lot or the surrounding area. There will be no negative impact resulting from proximity to dwellings, churches, schools, public structures, or other places of public gathering. There's adequate accessibility of the premises to emergency vehicles. There's adequate light and air to the premises and to properties in the vicinity. There are adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities provided. Proposed use would not interfere with preservation of cultural and historic landmarks and structures. Proposed use would not alter the character of the neighborhood. Proposed use would be consistent with provisions of the city's comprehensive master plan and consistent with provisions of any applicable urban renewal plan, which in this case there is not. Proposed use meets all other applicable standards and requirements of the zoning code and is consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning code and with any other matters that may be considered to be in the interest of the general welfare. For that reason, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the bill. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for planning for my colleagues? No? Thank you, Mr. French. We will now go with BMZA.
Leave and do for the BMZA again. The BMZA recommends approval of this bill.
Thank you. DOT? Liam?
Chair Davis, DOT. DOT stands by its bill report, which is no objection.
Thank you. Law Department?
The Law Department is prepared to approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency if you agree with the facts or the statements made in the Planning Commission's reports as your facts.
Okay, thank you. HCD?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephanie Murdoch, Legislative Liaison for DHCD. We stand by our report in support of the bill.
Thank you. BDC? Anyone?
Raven Thompson with BDC. We stand by our report, no objection.
Thank you. Fire Department? No one from the Fire Department. They report they have no objection. The Parking Authority of Baltimore City? Anyone?
Good afternoon, Fran Bernzinski with the Baltimore City Parking Authority. We've reviewed the legislation and are in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're looking at any public testimony. Matt, do we have any public testimony on this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder for anyone joining by computer, please use the raise hand function. Let us know if you'd like to testify. It looks like we have one hand raised now. Nate Prettle, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for your time. This is Nate Prettle from AB Associates on behalf of the owner. And I'd just like to thank both Councilman Pinkett for sponsoring this legislation, as well as the Reservoir Hill Improvement Council for their work. This was really about a 2-year community process. As Councilman Pinkett mentioned, this started as a 4-unit proposal. And after a series of meetings, we came to the agreement that the 2 units would be preferable. And this is a building that's sat vacant and blighted on Reservoir Street for about the past 30 years. It's a building that has significant historical value, and this proposal will allow it to be renovated per historic standards and brought back to becoming an asset to the rest of the community. It's an exciting project. I urge the committee to move the legislation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any of my colleagues on the committee have any questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you. we will go into, we need to do a motion for finding of facts. Before we do that, does any of my colleagues have any questions or concerns or issues? No? Do I have a motion to move to finding of facts?
So moved.
And who's that?
Second by Costello.
Who made the motion?
Pinkett.
Pinkett? All those in favor of the finding of facts, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The finding of facts is passed. There's no amendments to this bill. Do I have a motion to move the bill?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Councilwoman Clark. Have a second?
Second by Pinkett.
Second by Councilman Pinkett. We'll take a vote. Vice Singer votes yes. Councilwoman Sneed?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sneed, yes. Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Clark is yes. Councilman Costello?
Yes.
Costello is yes. Councilman Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilman Dorsey, yes. Councilwoman Middleton?
Yes.
Middleton's yes. Councilman Pinkett?
Yes.
Pinkett's yes. Councilman Robert Stokes?
Yes.
Councilman Stokes is yes. We have yet 8. This bill passes. There's no amendments. And the committee will report the bill to the council on July 13th. This concludes both hearings. I want to thank the participants and everyone for being here and testifying. This concludes it. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.